as our visitors know, and I work in the Office of Sustainability for the city. So the main role that I have the privilege of leading is called Community Climate Resilience. So it's like, how can we respond to climate change from a community lens? Making sure to be responding to the needs of community members rather than having politics do their games and make decisions that community members don't actually want. So that's kind of my goal, is to make sure we're all heard. Okay, so first I just want to do the basics of like, why is our climate changing? Why is this becoming an issue that's worsening? And how are humans sort of to blame? Well, some of us. So what's happening is that in our Earth, we have this wonderful planet that has been gifted to us, and we have a carbon cycle. So we have natural things that create carbon and suck or sequester carbon. And what humans are doing with our activities of burning fossil fuels when we drive, when we make energy, etc., is we are disrupting that carbon cycle. We're adding way too much carbon into the air, and it can't balance it. So since the Industrial Revolution, when we started booming and making all this production on the backs of Black and brown and low income people. So it was already a human rights issue. And then we realized, oh, now we're destroying our planet. We have seen that we've been releasing too much carbon dioxide or CO2. That's why we call it like a carbon misbalance. And again, this is from burning fossil fuels like gas, natural gas, even though it's called natural gas, it's not actually helpful for us to be burning it. And then we also have some other gases that are in our planet from this. So we have methane, chlorofluorocarbons, and this is making higher temperatures, it's melting the sea ice, and it's causing the seas and all water bodies to rise, because as the sea ice melts, it adds more water into the ocean. So, on one hand, we have climate change, right? And then on the other hand, we also have environmental injustice that just happens without climate change. It's being worsened by climate change as well. So with environmental justice, we know that low income folks, Black and brown and Indigenous people are worse affected by this because of where we have companies choosing to put these things that are puffing out all of this carbon, right? So we have lower air quality, our air is being affected. We have dangerous conditions for the things that we need, like infrastructure. And we also have wear and tear on our homes from these things. And then also it's hurting our bodies and our environment, just like a body, right? Okay, but then, but we can respond to this issue, right? And we can have it in a way that is from a justice lens. So we know that Philly, because of climate change, is getting hotter and wetter. It's very hot today. In late May, it's 91 degrees. That's abnormal. We're going to see more of that, right? So we know. And we also know that climate change worsens things that are unequal between us as humans, like environmental racism and injustice. So we have to respond to make sure we're highlighting those who are getting worse affected by these things. And so that's responding through a justice lens. That's making sure that we're shifting power from big corporations and government and putting it in the hands of the people that are experiencing these things, or frontline communities. And then we also want to make sure that it's not just a question of going in and taking out the harm, but actually maximizing the benefits. How do we thrive in this environment instead of just survive? So some ways that we can respond to climate change are two things, right? So we can respond from an adaptation lens and a mitigation lens. Mitigation means that you're just like reducing the things that are causing the problem, right? So we can change our energy sources, like wind energy. There's an example. Adaptation is when you're like, okay, here's this problem, can't totally change it, so let's respond by changing ourselves or adapting. And so some examples of that are like a seawall. So not a great option, but if the seas are rising, then we're going to have to keep them down some way, right? Put a wall. Another example is like flood insurance, right? We have wetter weather, we need more insurance to deal with our homes. And then we have kind of a combo in the middle there of adaptation and mitigation. And that is things like greening, because they both are sucking the carbon, and so they're mitigating the harm, but it's also a change that you're making to your home or environment by adding greenery. So then there's a third way that we can respond to climate change that is really unique, and that communities all over the world have been leading, and that is having a tight relationship with each other and being able to rely on one another, or what we also call community cohesion. And when we combine that with being resilient or being able to bounce back from climate related incidences like a heat wave, we can call those two things community resiliency, which is what I do. And so, when people trust one another, they're more likely to work together in the event of emergency, right? If you think about your neighbors that you love and trust, you're going to be there for each other when a tree falls, when a huge storm happens, right? And you're going to be able to better respond to the issue. I just want to highlight really quick a case study that happened in Chicago in 1995, the year I was born. And that was a huge heat wave that happened in the whole city. It came out of nowhere. Folks were not ready for it or expecting it. And it actually had a huge death rate. It was a very serious catastrophe, actually, that happened. But what people saw and residents shared and researchers saw and studied was that the cohesion, the community resiliency and connection between the neighborhoods made a huge difference. So we have one neighborhood was Little Village. They were really tight. Everybody knew this about this neighborhood. Everybody was outside hanging out. There was lots of jobs there. And then there was North Lawndale, which was not as tight. Community spaces were not as well maintained, but the neighborhoods themselves had the same demographic information, the same incomes, similar people who lived there and loved there. And so what we saw was like a huge difference in death rate and also survivability from this event because the one neighborhood was so tight. And so we can just see it really can make a difference between life and death. So, we're talking about the different ways we can respond to this problem. What's the problem? And I just want to talk a little bit about like what Philly's doing and what kind of our office in particular as the Office of Sustainability, right? Like we're the ones that are sort of trying to respond to climate change. So one of the things that we've done is mapping heat in our city. And what we've seen is that some places are way hotter than other places. And it's not because of where the sun is or where the clouds are or anything like that. It's because of what the situation is in those neighborhoods, right? And we know, I'm looking at Miss Bernadette, who's a total pro on this. We know that in some of these neighborhoods, we have people who are taking care of their spaces, living good lives, thriving. So it's not the people, but it's actually the environment that they're living in. It has fewer trees. It has more dark spaces, right? So dark colored things absorb heat more, like roadways, right? Like sidewalks even. And so we know that some neighborhoods can be 22 degrees hotter than others on a given day. That is a huge difference. There's about a difference of 4 degrees that when you feel on your hand like water or something that you can burn your hand, right? So think of 22 degrees. And so we know that this is a very disparate effect. There is a heat disparity. We're experiencing things differently depending on who you are and where you live. So it is an issue of health equity and also racial equity. Okay, so the other part of this being a racial equity piece is that there have been reasons that something like the heat issue that we have, that some neighborhoods are hotter than others, there are reasons behind this. One of them is from how we have developed our land and what practices went into developing that land. One of them is called redlining. I'm sure lots of folks are familiar with that, but just to be so we're all on the same page, I will just define it. So it's when specifically Black and brown communities, this is what has happened, have been systematically denied services provided by the federal government, the local government, and institutions like schools, banks. And so if you look on the left side of the screen, there are red spaces on that map. That is Philly's Hulk map. And that shows us that there are dark red areas that were basically deemed hazardous because Black and brown people live there. And therefore they were not, for example, they weren't insured from the bank. And they also missed out on so many opportunities to get resources like trees or other things like schools that were well funded, for example. And so this has shaped where people live in Philly and why we have such a crazy different effect of heat, for example, in the city. So another reason that we can look to at least Philly's heat disparity. So we talked about, okay, there's policies that have gone into place that affected us, but there's also land use and zoning, right? So zoning is choosing certain spots in a land and deciding this will go in that spot, right? So you can see this is a little cutout. Charles, how rude. This is a cutout of North Philly that we're looking at right now. And I'm talking about North Philly because if you look on the map in the bottom right, the hotter areas, those yellow and red areas, primarily that's North Philly, right? So there are a couple, if you look up a little more, down a little more, yeah, there's some spots, but North Philly is really that spot where it's very, very hot. And if you look here, we have some zoning examples. It is hugely industrial zone. So people were like, okay, here's this spot in land and they're allowed to build industry here, right? And obviously they did not talk with the community members when they asked this, right? And as I'm sure Ms. Bernadette, who's on with us today, could attest to, this has changed, right? As over time, more and more things have changed. Trees have been fewer and fewer in number. They've been knocked down and not replaced. And so that is an issue with zoning, right? And so that's why we have to make sure to be involving all of the parties that have been involved, including those who make these decisions, right? Like planning and development, right? And making sure to hold accountability. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So then, however, we're talking about these bad negative things, but I just want to make sure to highlight that in the city, many communities are responding to this issue and have been for years and leading the way in responding to these problems. And it is only now that my office, for example, is starting to pick up on that momentum and support, right? So as an example, in our wonderful hunting park that we're here today in, there has been so much environmental justice practices taking place. For example, there was a big revitalization project for the park. We have the Hunting Park Community Garden. We have another community garden, right? We have Mike on with us today, who runs that. We have had projects take place that were helping to cool down the neighborhood, like white coating on roofs. We have had all types of cleanup initiatives happening with other folks that we have part of our project. We have a couple organizations in the neighborhood that have worked together to make sure to get corridor cleanups and maintaining spaces so that they're greened. And also a big treeing effort to make sure trees are managed here and also that we can plant more, right? And people learn about them. And then another two things that I want to make sure I highlight that I have had the privilege of working on with this neighborhood and the community members who I've gotten to work with, which is Beat the Heat Hunting Park and the Hunting Park Community Solar Initiative, which is why we're here today. I'm just going to quickly touch on two of those things that have happened in this neighborhood that I've had the pleasure of working on. So one of them is Beat the Heat Hunting Park. We talked about one of the issues that we can see that's happened from climate change and from environmental injustice, at least in this neighborhood, is that it's really hot, right? And we need to respond to that because heat is actually the #1 killer, the weather-related killer in the world. And so we need to respond to heat, right? And we know that it's going to only get hotter, right? All of the issues that we're talking about today, they intertwine. Heat is intertwined with all types of issues, including poverty. So if you look on the left side of the screen, you can see Beat the Heat was a project in order to bring heat relief resources to the neighborhood with community members. So asking them, what do you want, what do you need, and how would you like it to be done, right? It was kind of the goal. And so some of the things that we did are sort of in those little pictures there, but just making sure we're finding ways to pay people to work on this project, spreading information and awareness about the topic, making sure we were bringing other resources and projects to the neighborhood, such as the Drexel Heat Mitigation Project, which is like benches, planters, stuff like that happening on a block level, and making sure also that people are getting the resources that they need, right? So utility assistance programs, fans, and air conditioning. And then if you look on the right side, another project that really overlaps with that and any type of climate resiliency initiative is that we also have to pay attention to how much energy costs and how people are going to pay for them. So I'm really happy to see a couple of you, Vicki and Pancella are on today, who were part of the energy burden focus group, so they know what's up with that. But we had a couple focus groups, we had 18, where we talked about what is happening in the city with energy burning. Can you tell us about it? Like, how much do you pay for your energy? Is that affordable? Are you able to do those things? And the reason for that is because if we're not responding to the fact that energy is just too expensive, then how could we ever respond to when it's too hot in someone's house, right? So I just wanted to touch on those two things, so I made sure to share about that. And I think now I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Charles Lanier, and he is going to talk about his contribution through HPCRC, Hunting Park CRC. And I had the pleasure of also working with him on those projects. So we're going to stay on this side as well while he talks about that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheyenne. Good afternoon to everybody. Good to see you, Vicki and Bernadette and other people. But good to see you. Good to have you on. Hunting Park Community Revitalization Corporation, formerly Hunting Park NAC, we still are a NAC. My name is Charles Lanier. I'm the executive director of the organization, nonprofit 501c3. And we are about the business of making sure that we are administer programs and services that are housing, but related to housing, as well as our initiative for housing preservation. And we do this through a number of services and programs, inclusive of our mortgage foreclosure prevention program, housing counseling referrals, basic assistance repair, rental assistance, rebates, utility grants, as well as the energy workshops, which you're going to see the workshop done in a few minutes, energy conservation, and so forth. So we are definitely entrenched into this mission and goal of making sure that we provide services to our neighbors and our residents to preserve their housing stock. We are a food distribution center as well, and we work with various organizations around training opportunities, and we have what we call community meetings or our service area briefings and our newsletter. Cheyenne spoke about the Heat to Heat project. We were very happy to be a part of that project. In addition to the great work that the Office of Sustainability has done, our role was really supporting them into getting the information out to our residents, engaging our residents around the issue of climate change. We also were very happy to be able to distribute fans and air conditioners free to some of our residents as well. And hopefully we will continue to do that kind of outreach and in the coming months with our fan distribution and our air conditioners as well. Okay. One of the things that Cheyenne mentioned, of course, is the high cost of the energy burden project. People are burdened with high utility costs, and it's not surprising that some households are paying as much as 50% of their income towards utility payments. We try to help. We have resources, we have grants to help people to pay their utility bills, gas, electric, and water. We just really are getting into our new project pretty much with the Divisional Office of Housing and Community Development, providing rental assistance, people that were affected by COVID, and their income was reduced as a result. Excuse me, we can provide up to 18 months of rent. We have prepared, and anyone is participating via Zoom, some giveaways, some bags, information, and resources for our residents as well. And in the bags that you will receive, we're asking also, what I put in there is a flyer about the upcoming workshops that we're going to do May 26th and June 5th, and we're asking people to share this information with their friends, neighbors, and families for those workshops that's coming up. We also have information about Stay Cool Philly that's in the bags, as well as our services and programs. I have information about the rental assistance program in the bag, 311 illegal dumping issues, the basic assistance repair program, senior services as well that are available for our seniors who are a major issue with them around this energy or this heating issue that we are talking about today and the effect that it has on their households. But really glad to be here. We'll be doing more of these throughout the summer as well, and we hope that we can get people to understand that this is very serious, to spread the word, talk about it, talk it up to your friends, talk to your block captains, talk to your neighbors, just talk it up so that we can get this momentum going. So thank you very much.
So good afternoon, everyone. My name is BJ McDuffie, and I will be your facilitator for the conservation workshop. This is a great segue into what Charles and Cheyenne just talked about, because a lot of times, especially depending on what community you're talking about, they don't look at climate change and in a global manner. They look at how am I feeding my family? That's how they think. But one of the ways that they can do this, be a part of the solution and not the problem, is through energy conservation. Just the energy that they save burns less, which produces less CO in the air. And so that could be you guys' contribution. So my job today is to teach you guys a little bit about that, since we're partnering with them. So I'm going to go over some PGW information about their programs, a little bit about the PUC, because we need to make sure that we understand we do have rights, and we don't have to just take whatever they shove down our throats, but to point you in the right direction. The energy, the Drexel Energy Rights Project, I know it's not a whole lot of you guys on the meeting, but Drexel University is doing a research on energy rights. And I encourage everyone, is no income limit or anything like that, to actually take the survey. You will receive a $25 gift card, but documentation beats conversation. So we can take this research and then say, hey, every year you offer LIHEAP at 150%. But if you make $2 too much, you get no help, but you're still struggling. So without, the government understanding this, it'll stay 150%, and then the working poor is just still struggling, you know what I mean? And then of course, the actual workshop, and I have a video that demonstrates the materials that you guys will be getting at some point. All right, so, well, obviously, you want to have your computer on mute, so that goes without saying. And at the end of the presentation, if you have any questions, I'll take those then. You can just come off of mute and ask me, because I'm not sure how the chat box is working with this setup here. And then notification of the pickup of your individual kit. So we probably do not know that today, but I will work with Charles, Alan, and Cheyenne in order to get the participants their kits. There's one thing that I do need to point out. There is a one-pager that you must fill out. There's a packet of information that you're going to give, but there's a one-pager. You know how that goes. No job is done until the paperwork is done, right? So I can't have 100 kits, but don't have paperwork for 100 kits. I have to account for each kit that I give out. All right, so for the gas company, their programs are basically, and I'm not going to go in depth like I would if a representative from PGW was here, but I'm going to talk about the 3 buckets that they do have. So the customer responsibility program, most folks know that as CRP. That is that's PGW's low income program. Now, the great thing about that program is it doesn't really matter how much you owe PGW, like 1,000, 2,000, 10,000, it really doesn't matter. If you meet the income eligibility, which is 150% of the federal poverty guideline, whatever you owe them when you sign up, they're going to assess your bill at either 8, 9, or 10% of your monthly income. So for example, if your monthly bill is going to be $30, they'll make you pay $35 because the $5 go towards the arrearage. Now, if you're on that program for 3 years and you don't miss a payment, irregardless to what you owe PGW, is forgiven. It's just wiped clean, okay? Budget billing, that's where, you're over income for the programs, but you don't really want a surprise in your bill. You don't want your bill to be fluctuating. So what they do is they take a look out at what you had used last year, and they average it out. So yes, we will be paying, a lot of money in the wintertime or vice versa, summertime if you don't use air conditioning, but they average it out so that your bill comes in around the same So for that 12-month period, you're still paying what you need to pay. And they do evaluate that because some people, last year you might have had a 18-year-old in your house and now he's on his way to college, so it's going to be less use. So they do evaluate that and then make those adjustments. And then the third bucket is the payment agreement. Now, sometimes even with our low income customers, there is always when you don't provide, go under the guidelines of the program, then you become in what's called default, or even budget billing for that matter. The last possibility you have is the payment agreement. So the payment agreement is, you basically agree to pay a certain amount, each month. The one thing that I like to tell the clients that I normally talk to, because most of the clients we service is in the low income bracket, do not accept a payment agreement that you cannot keep. And people will do that because they want their gas on. But if you can't afford the bill, it's just going to be 2 months and then they're going to cut, you got to go through this whole process. So, talk to them. The water department, PICO, and PGW, it is not their goal to shut people off. But if you're not communicating with them, you have to look at it. It's a business like any other business. It's a commodity. You're using their commodity and they want their money. Simple as that. So just so you guys are aware, what the PUC, the Pennsylvania PUC, now I don't want to go too deep, but y'all remember years ago, you could only get your electricity from PICO. Well, then Act 129 came out and they sort of deregulated it. So anybody could, sell you electricity. So they monitor electricity, natural gas, water, telecommunications, motor carriers, so transportation, CTC, the pipelines, and then also the rails. So you don't have to pay attention to all this stuff that's on the slide because I kind of just said that. But basically what I want you guys to understand is when you have an issue or you believe you have an issue with the utility company, the first thing you should do is contact that utility company. Don't automatically contact PUC because the first thing they're going to say is, have you talked to the utility company? And then the only thing that's being disputed is the bill that you're talking about. So if you're disputing February's bill because you believe that it's not right, the meter's broken, they're overcharging you, that's fine, that's put aside, but you still have to pay March, April, May, June. You do not stop paying your utility until they determine, they have an answer for you. And it's unfortunate because a lot of folks don't understand that. And then now they got this, yeah, well, you won February, but now you owe us $2,000 because you haven't paid nothing since January. So that's the point that I'm making with that. And that is a good course of action. Oftentimes too, you want to be aware when you're calling the utility company, because in a perfect world, crazy things wouldn't happen, but we don't live in a perfect world. So you need to kind of monitor what's going on in your house. Who knows, people could be tapping into your line, which is stealing your utility, making it cost more. And that's why you think that you're being ripped off. You are, but not by the utility company, by someone else. All right, so the energy rights survey that I talked about, again, guys, I am not going to read all this stuff off the screen. What it is a research project that Drexel University is doing. And if you participate, it is anonymous. There's no identifying factor. The only identifying factor to this energy rights survey is I get your name and phone number because I'm the one to deliver the cards, right? So, and the questions that they ask, you guys know, or should know, or possibly know, right? Was your house built in the 1920s? Was it built in 1950s? Things of that nature. How do you heat your home? How has the pandemic affected you? Things of that nature. And then once you do that, again, there is anonymous, so they cannot look at it and say, oh, this is what Ms. Smith's answer is. They don't know, they ask male, female, just for, statistics, but there's no way they can pinpoint back what you said exactly to you. I really encourage everyone to take the survey. Again, there is no income limit, but the research that Drexel is doing is to help climate control. Is actually out of the climate control department, Dr. Allie Kenner, and then she has some researchers that makes these phone calls. So if you would take down Morgan Serrero at the bottom, her number is 609-444-6253. Now, all you need to do, because it's not a lot of you guys, you can do it one or two ways. You're more than welcome to email me, and I can forward the name, and I can forward them all at one time, especially through, if it's okay with Cheyenne and Alan and them, because they have y'all contact information, right? Because you can do it either via the email or phone. Phone is much easier, and when they call you, they actually set up a time that is convenient for you. Now, it says here it's roughly an hour. They kind of gave themselves a cushion. If you're a long talker, it might be an hour, but if you kind of hit it and quit it, it's not going to be an hour. And I'm real, so that's just me, y'all. It's the only way I know how to bet, right? And then I will be delivering gift cards. So just to give you guys an idea of how successful this is, and I mean, $25 is huge, especially in this pandemic. On May 8th, we did a service briefing out at the Huntington Park, I guess you call it Huntington Park, right? That area. When I leave here, I am going to distribute 8 gift cards for the surrounding people that already took the survey. And I'm sure next week I'll be back, because we try to give them out once a week and not have folks wait too long. Okay. So again, if it's okay with you and you want to do it, if not, you can just call Morgan directly. But if you call Morgan directly, please let her know that you are from the One Hope Community Church. Okay, this way we know where you are and we're not running all the way around the city. All right, so now is my part. So conserving energy really means save energy, which ultimately means save money. In order to do that, you want to check for air leaks and seal them annually. You want to perform proper maintenance on your heating, cooling, plumbing, electrical, and the building shell itself. You want to apply for all income eligible programs, energy programs that you are may be eligible for. Inside the packet that you get, you don't have to guess at it. There is literature that talks about all of the programs and the appropriate income guidelines. Now, because Charles Lanier, who spoke before me, he actually runs one of the neighborhood energy centers. So rather than going to PICO for CAP and going to the water department for TAP or going to PGW for the CRP, you really can go right to the Huntington Park. I think it's 3960 Delhi Street. 3760 Delhi Street. And they can take care of all of your needs. And then lastly, we're going to be talking about modifying wasteful energy behaviors. One of the things that we found out, the utility companies will bill you $100, and there's really nothing wrong with that. The problem is they're billing us $100, but we really only use $60 worth. The other 40 is wasted through the building shell itself or through your behavior. All right. So in order to understand how to conserve energy, especially gas, you need to understand how air moves. So in this illustration here, the blue arrows is representing cold air. Cold air gets pulled into your house from its lowest point. And then warm air, which is represented by the red arrows, escapes out the highest peak. So you may, if you have a roof, it's the roof. If you have an attic, it's the attic. And then air moves from hot to cold. So you guys can understand that. If it's the winter time, the harder the winter, and let's say you got your thermostat set on 72, but it is 40 degrees outside and you have not caulked around your windows, you got all these little cracks and crevices, the warm air is naturally trying to go out. So what winterizing your house in a nutshell is you want to keep the cold air out and then the warm air in. Okay, so on this illustration, it shows the before and after. The after is actually after they apply for the state-funded weatherization program. I don't know if you guys can see my little buddy, the little man up on in the roof cavity that is actually blowing the insulation in. All right, so annual maintenance, you want to keep your registers, most people call them ducts, clean and unblocked. You want to replace your furnace filter if you have forced air. And it is not put in one filter and you good all winter. You want to check it every 30 to 45 days, closer to the 30 if you have a cat, dog, or a hamster. They shed hair and dandruff and stuff just like we do. Lastly, about the filter, if you got some family members that is dealing with any respiratory issues, COPD, emphysema, asthma, you may want to purchase what is called the HEPA filter, HEPA. It costs a little more, but it gets more pollutants out the air. Okay. And for those that have boilers, that have the radiator system, you want to make sure you fill and bleed the system at the start of the heating season. And you want to start from the radiator that is furthest from the boiler, and you'll understand that a little better. You see the bottom picture is the radiator with the key. The next, the rope caulk, which is also something that you get, that's for the movable part, because the caulk that that's inside your kit is for anything stationary, and I cannot point that out enough. Please do not use the acrylic caulk where your windows slide up and down. And if you do, don't call me because I told you not to do that, okay? It is very difficult to remove caulk, all right? And then lastly, if you still feel uncomfortable, we give you a plastic window kit. So it is not one of those ones you buy like at Home Depot and you got to use the blow dryer. It's actually 4 mils, very strong plastic, framing and all that. And you'll get that at the video. All right, so for the boiler system, and I just want to point out, because not a lot of people are familiar with their systems. The blue arrow that you see, it tells you the PSI. So the top numbering 0, 10, 20, 30 tells you how much pounds per square inch. The bottom numbering starts like 80, 100, 110, 120, tells you how hot the water is inside. For a general rule of thumb, this is a general rule of thumb. For a 2-story home, you want to have 20 pounds of pressure when you're bleeding it. 3-story home, 30. Because on the actual boiler itself, there is a warning device where you don't want to put too much water in, because there is what is called the pressure relief valve that will open up and shoot that hot water out. Okay. So I'm gonna bring it home for you with the boiler system. The first arrow is the expansion tank. So if you hear this knocking within your system, it's probably because your expansion tank is full. Think about it along these terms for any gardeners out there. When you dig a hole to plant something, it's always more dirt. Well, hot water takes up more space than cold water. So as that water filters into the boiler and there's no room, it goes to the expansion tank. And then once it cools down and there's room, it filters in. But if the expansion tank is full, there's nowhere for it to go. And it's as simple as turning on a faucet, letting the water drain out so that it has somewhere to go. If you have never filled and bleed your system, because a lot of people will say, oh yeah, I know how to let the air out, but think about it along these terms. When you boil water for coffee every morning, you don't end up with the same amount you started with, right? Because it evaporates, it cooks away. So last winter, your water would go from the boiler to the radiator and back. And at some point, it's gonna cook itself away. So if you have to know a little bit about your system, because you may have an automatic feeder. I don't know, because I'm not looking at your home. But if you don't, that the second arrow is the inlet valve. So that's how you actually let water in. Now, this particular one is a lever, but you could have the round one, look like a shutoff valve. So you would open up the lever, you would go to the pressure gauge. If it's a 2-story home, once that needle hits the 20, you go back to the inlet valve and then shut that off. Then you want to go upstairs to the radiator that is highest and furthest away from the heater, the boiler itself. So if the boiler's in the back part of the basement, it's a 2-story house, you want to start second floor, front bedroom. Okay, you take the little, everybody know what the radiator key is. Take the little radiator key, you turn it into the bleeder valve. You should hit air. If you get no water, you close the bleeder valve and you go back downstairs, open up the inlet valve, let it move back to the 20, and then start that process all over again. And the reason why that's important, I know you can't see too much of me, but imagine something that is 6 feet tall and you got water from the 3 feet down and air 3 feet up. Well, the way a radiator works, it radiates the hot water out. So you want to let the air out so the water rises all the way up, maximizing the heat that it gives off. Make sense? Last thing about radiators, before I move on to the circular pump, all radiators are near a window, right? Half the heat goes to the wall and the other half goes to the living space. Now, if you've been in the same property for 20, 30 years, you know you can't do nothing with the radiator. You can't paint behind, you can't move, you don't do nothing, right? But because the earth is continuously going around and then we live in a region that is hot and cold, things shrink and expand. So you're going to get these little holes in your wall. Well, that heat that's coming out on the side where the wall is actually being lost through the wall. So the next time you're at the store or you order something from Amazon or whatever, keep the cardboard box. You want to cut it slightly larger than the radiator. You want to wrap some foil, aluminum foil. It's 2 sides to foil. It's dull and shiny. So you want to make sure the shiny side is facing you. And if I'm the radiator, you just cut it, slightly larger than the radiator and slide it right behind the radiator and leave it there. The heat that would be lost is reflected back into the living space, so you get more heat. Make sense? Now, the last one is the circular pump. The circular pump is what actually helps pump the water through. And it's not, you really can't see it, but y'all know how to pop open a lotion bottle. You want to put 2 or 3 drops of 3-in-1 motor oil in the front one, 2-3 drops in the back one, and you want to do this every heating season. It keeps the bar bearings inside lubricated so the gears don't jam up, just like how you put oil in your car, okay? 3-in-1 motor oil is about $2.50. To replace your circular pump is $250. Do the math, okay? Do the math. All right, so for forced air, if you have a forced air system, you have a filter, unless you got the very old dinosaur gravity heat. Gravity heat, sort of like what goes up must come down. And you will know if you have that because you got this great big old heater and it's a great big old cutout at the bottom. A couple of them around, but not that many. So most people have forced air. And I'm just showing you where the filter is. So what you definitely don't want to do is you don't want a dirty filter. You don't want your filter to get like this. And I appreciate the hand. I call her the hand because these are actual pictures of people that learned stuff, that went through these workshops and then realized that they needed to do some things in their home. So don't let your filter get that bad. It actually blocks the airflow and makes your heater work harder, right? In the beginning of the heating season, we recommend you purchase about 4 or 5 of them. You put a fresh one in, you put the other 4 inside a plastic bag. Don't just put it in the basement because it's a filter, it's going to collect the dust, right? So that when you check it every 30 or 45 days and you see that you need to change it, you don't have to go to Home Depot, you already have it. And if you have central air, you may want to need to go get more because you're putting filters in all year round. Okay. All right. Very good. Okay. And just in case there's someone out there with oil heater, just showing what the ductwork looks like. Y'all know the ductwork takes the heat, from the heater to the room and back. That's all that is. And the middle one is the emergency switch. And it's an emergency switch on all heaters. What I'm pointing out here is if you hear a boom or bang or clackle or anything and you think it's the heater, first thing you want to do is go and hit that switch. Kill the power to the heater. You might be uncomfortable for a day or 2 till you can get the service man out, but you'll be alive. Okay. And for oil burners, the last one just showed is the flame viewer. And y'all know what a good burning fire looks like. That's what you should be able to see. It shouldn't be dark, it shouldn't be dirty, it should look like a good fire. All right, so NECA's network of neighborhood energy centers, I am only going to highlight one, and that is Huntington Park, because he's here. But just inside your, and we're in this section, right? Inside the packet that you get, because again, I don't know where you guys live at, or you may have some family members, this map is in there. Okay, see, I'm highlighting Huntington Park because Brenda Crawfield works at Huntington Park and she's assisting a client. So some of the, you can see on the screen some of the basic programs that the neighborhood energy centers provide, and that is also inside the literature as well. But what I like to point out is when you visit a neighborhood energy center, you want to do your homework. You want to write down everything that is going on in your home. So when you meet with Brenda, or you meet with Luce, or you meet with Charles, you're saying, hey, I need line heat. I got a shut off notice. My faucet is leaking. You know, I got all these things. It's only one or two things they're going to tell you. Yes, there's a program for that, or no, there's not. And if there is one that they don't do themselves, they can point you in the right direction. Okay, it is a disservice to go in there and get one application done when you could have got 4 or 5. And if your house has never been state funded weatherized, you definitely want to apply for that. What I like to say about the state funded weatherization program, it is a property based program. Income too, 200% of the federal poverty guidelines, but it's property. So what I mean by that is, say you got the weatherization program and you lived at 1234 Market Street. 2 years later, you moved out and you moved at 1236. You can apply again. Now the person at 34 can't apply, but you can, because that house has never been weatherized. Y'all with me on that? Okay, very good. All right, so conservation though, guys, starts with you, okay? And due to the essence of time, because I'm going to show some a video, I'm going to point out just some of the obvious things that we don't think that we do, but we do. Everybody got a cell phone, right? Everybody got a cell phone. Well, just about everybody got a cell phone. And what they do, because people are creatures of habits, right? We have our favorite cup, our favorite bowl, our favorite blanket. So you also have a designated outlet for your charger. And your kids, everybody know that that's your outlet, right? I'm simply saying, if the phone is not attached to the charger, unplug it and you can just drop it on the floor. Or you can purchase what you see here, the surge protector, where they have all these different appliances. You want to turn lights off when they're not in use. You know, I'm not saying if you're watching TV and you go downstairs to get a snack, you ain't got to turn the light off for that if you're reading or something like that. But if you in the back bedroom and ain't nobody been in there for 5 hours, the light don't need to be on, okay? You want to unplug appliances not in use. So in addition to the cell phone, here's a real kicker. So in your kitchen, most people have the newer model stove, and I'm definitely not telling you to move your stove because I don't know how much play you got, right? But it has a clock. Then you have a microwave with a clock. Some people got a coffee pot with a clock. And then they have a battery operated clock on the wall. Don't none of them got the same time. But do you know anybody that stand in front of a microwave and say, oh, it's 11:25. Oh, it's 11:26. You paying for that. You know, so these are habits that we don't even think about. And nobody likes to be bogged down, you know, with a bunch of clothes, but dress accordingly. You don't have to have on, especially I like to, you know, pick on the married couples. If you married, you already run the prize, so you don't need to walk around in your boxes and stuff. I mean, come on, put on some clothes and turn your heat up, okay? And I see we got all adults, so I felt comfortable saying that, right? And then you definitely want to check for leaky drafts annually. Consider installing a programmable thermostat. Even if you don't caulk your windows or do anything, if you turn your thermostat back by 1 degree. So for example, if you're accustomed to having it on 72 and you turn it to 71, you're going to automatically save 3% because you're telling your appliance you don't need as much power, okay? And the other thing about a programmable thermostat, I have it on good authority. Cats and dogs is already protected by Mother Nature, so you don't need to leave the heat or the air on for them. Okay, furniture doesn't care whether it's hot or cold, right? But if you leave your house, and we lazy, that's why we don't turn our heat down or our air off, because we don't want to come home to a hot or a cold house. But if you're going for 8 hours or 4 hours at the senior center, you just paying the utility company for stuff that you're not using. And you can program this, whatever. Say the first person goes to bed at 11 o'clock, you program it especially in the wintertime. You can program it to cut down at 10:30 or 11 because they're going to get underneath a comforter, a blanket, a quilt, or something. But the first person gets up to go to work or school, say 5 o'clock, you can program it to cut back up at 4:30. So they're getting up to a comfortable home. Okay. And all that downtime, you're not paying for it. There's a myth that your hot water needs to be scalding in order to disinfect everything. That is not true. 120 degrees Fahrenheit is hot enough to do anything you want to do. Even with the current pandemic, they did not say wash your hand in scalding hot water. They said warm. Okay, it don't need to be scalding. And then if your water is too hot, the example that you see on the screen is how you lower the electric hot water heater. And if it's electric, it got wires coming from the top, right? If it's gas, you kind of control it just like you would an oven. So to say energy saving, warm, hot, very hot. You definitely don't want them very hot because the harder appliance work, it burns out quicker. So you'll be replacing it faster. So, right? And even though this is really kind of like a dinosaur, because now they're doing things, Energy Star, the insulation is inside the hot water heater. So if you got a fairly new hot water heater, I would not recommend you purchasing a hot water heater insulation jacket. If you ever boiled water for coffee and poured it into the cup and the cup popped, it's because the water was too hot for the glass, and that would make it too hot. All right, so what you actually get, I'm telling y'all straight up, we don't got no more pens, so you're not getting a pen, okay? You're getting a PGW reusable bag. Number 2 is the box of rope caulk. Number 3 is the literature and the documentation that I talked about. Number 4 is the plastic window kit. Fits a 40 by 80 great big picture window or a few smaller windows. 5 is the tube caulk itself. Now you will notice that this caulk here is slightly different than caulk you may be familiar with. We found that the seniors, our seasoned saints, was having an issue using the caulking gun in the standard caulking. So this one here, you just simply cut and squeeze, just like you would whipped cream or something like that. Okay. And then number 6 is the door sweep. Okay. Okay. So before we show the video, just on behalf of the organizations that are here today and PGW, we thank you for attending the workshop. And it's just going to be a little quick video so that you guys understand how to use the materials that you're going to be giving out. So video time. And that's my time. To the crack.
Hi, my name is BJ McDuffie. I'm an energy consultant with the Energy Coordinating Agency, ECA. Today I will be demonstrating some self-help materials that the participants of any of our conservational workshops will receive. So the first item that I want to demonstrate today is the tube caulk, acrylic caulk. If you can see it lasts for 40 years. Okay. However, you need to check your windows annually to make sure there's a proper seal. Okay, so step 1 is you want to remove the tip, cut it on a 45-degree angle. So just simply take your utility knife and cut it. You want to make sure that there's a tip. This tip guides you into the crack. Unlike the caulk that you would traditionally use with the caulking gun, this one does not require a gun. You simply cut it and squeeze. As you can see, the material's coming up. Now we're ready for application. Take your index finger and you want to smooth it out. You want to make sure that the caulk is touching both sides of what you're trying to seal. Voila. Okay, next item in the conservation kit that you will receive is called Mortite Rope Caulk. Feels like putty. This is designed for the areas where the window moves. I'm going to pull out your box of rope caulk. As you can see, you got about 7 or 8 beads. These are called the rope caulk itself. Comes out in strips. So what determines how many strips you use is the window area itself. This is not that bad. It's not that wide. So we just may pull off 2 strips. 1, 2, like so. Now, it's depending on what you're comfortable with. You can either, most people will do it like this with the whole rope caulk in their hand and smash in with their index finger. Or you may do like this. Take a bit off at a time. Pull it. Put it to where you want to apply. Take your index finger and smash it in. Now this is during the winter months. You know, you're closing the house up for the season. This isn't, you don't apply this when it's 70 degrees outside because you want air to come in. So this is the heart of the winter. You would apply this across the bottom, of course this side, where the 2 windows meet at, upper sash, lower sash, right in here, up the top window, across, and then down this window. The next item that I'm going to demonstrate is a plastic window kit. This particular window kit is very good. It has a 4 mil for the plastic, and then it fits a 50 by 80 huge picture window or a few smaller windows. First thing that you want to do when you get ready to apply it, you want to separate your items out. So this here is the framing of the window. This strip is the zip lock. Comes off in an adhesive strip. So when you get ready to apply this, make sure you know exactly where you want to put it because it will stick at the first time you let it go. So then you want to put this to this window like so. And press. Squeeze it in to make sure you have it. As you can see, we got a little bit to go. So you want to pull out another strip. Again, you can use the tape measure or you can have a pen. Some people mark it like this. They will go here and say, okay, I need this much more. And you want to press down right where the mark is. Now sometimes once you get it started, you can take and pop it like so. Very simple. Put your excess material out the way. Take the remaining of the strips that you want to use and you put it where you left off at. It's not quite high enough for a ladder, not quite short enough for where, you know what I mean? I still get on your tippy toes. So after you made your measurements, there's 2 ways of cutting this plastic. So depending on what area you're using to cut, you just want to be mindful that this is a knife, and if you penetrate your kitchen table, your wood floors, it will leave a mark. Or a simpler way is once you make your initial cut, you just follow your line, going straight down, and you take your scissors and just let it go like so. Then you come up with your scissors, if you have your mark already, get the initial cut, open it up, and just follow down that line. We're just going down with this. You hear snap in place. We started with the tube caulk. Remember, this is for anything that do not move, only stationary areas. The rope caulk, which is where you apply to the parts of the window that actually move. And then the last punch, 1, 2, 3, the plastic window kit. What's left of what we did not install. As you can see, here is the finished product. Okay, class, now that we've learned how to cover the window during the winter months to keep the cold air from getting in, I also want to demonstrate some tips on how you can put the materials up for the summer and also reuse them over and over again. I'm going to start with the plastic window kit. So you come over to the plastic window, the window where you installed it. You want to take the bottom one out. And you can just lay it down in pieces as you need to. And you want to take this one side out, just the one side for right now. Okay? All the way up. Then what you want to do is take your plastic from one side, okay, so that we can get to all the rope caulk that we put up. Remember the rope caulk? So we're taking all the rope caulk down. You can just throw it right here, out your way. Take all the rope caulk down. Don't forget the centerpiece. Do all of that. Okay, and the piece across the top. All right, now we have that put down. So before we go any further, you want to have a plastic bag handy. Take your rope caulk, all of your rope caulk, and simply throw it in here, stick it in the basement somewhere. If it gets a little hard, you can take and put it in a microwave for like 3 to 5 seconds so it soften up, and you can just keep reusing it until it falls apart. So we'll tie this up, and later on we'll throw it in our basement. So we got one side of the plastic undone. Now what you want to do is you want to put this side one back up. Okay. Just want to show you what it is I'm doing. This side, the plastic. So now you have this up, and you got the bottom one down. You're going to take your plastic, roll it like so. Like so. And if your blind is here, your curtains, you know, however high up you want to go with this, you can. Then take your Ziploc, lock this back in place, like so. Take your other side, lock that in place. Let me go this way so you can see better. Lock that back in place. Then you want to take your 2 bottom ones, lock that in place, or one, it just, you know, depends on how you had to cut it. That back in place. Now, come next winter, when it's time for you to air seal again, remember you want to check the caulk to see if you need to caulk the frame. Make sure if you still need to use the rope caulk, you go down in the basement and get the old supply. And then you undo the bottom, undo the sides, and let the plastic fall back down in place, and then re-secure it. And now, since it's nice weather, you have ventilation coming in. But you at all times know where your self-help material is. Okay guys, the last part of the conservational kit is what is called the door sweep. This has an adhesive back and it goes right on the door. One thing I want to point out is there's a bend. So you want to make sure the bend touches the actual floor. So you have your pin where the door ends. And you just want to make a mark, some kind of mark that you can recognize. Then you take your utility knife, kind of see where it's at, get it started. You make a bend, go up and down, just like that, it loosens it up some. Then take your utility knife and then just cut. Take your adhesive backing off, right? Now, you can do it as you go or just take the whole thing off, whichever way you feel more comfortable. But what's most important is that you have that bend on the floor. Just keep that in mind. Okay, take that off. You want to make sure the bend, so start at the floor so you don't have to go do it 3 and 4 times. Make sure that your plastic adhesive is touching the door, back of the door, and the forward part is touching the floor. And be mindful that this is adhesive, so you really want to know what you're doing or where you want to put your mark at. Because once you stick it to the door, it's stuck. And as you can see, the plastic is touching the floor, preventing that cold air from coming in.
All right, good. Thank you, BJ. That's great. You need to have your own little TV show or something. That's really informational and YouTube, whatever, but it's great. I just want to add that for those of you who are participating via Zoom, we have kits for you. Everything that BJ demonstrated, we have the kits, we have the materials. You certainly can stop by our office, call our office, 215-225-5560, or come by our office, 3760 North Delhi Street. We would prefer that you call first because of COVID precautions. We're trying to be as safe as possible and try to control the flow of people coming into our office. But you can come and you can pick up a kit and fill out the a little survey questionnaire and receive a step-by-step guide as to how to do everything that BJ mentioned or talked about today. So again, thank you. Spread the word about what we're doing. We will continue to do these workshops via Zoom and or in person.
While you're thinking about that, just a big shout out and a thank you to Pastor Matt Lynn over here at One Hope Community Church here in Hunting Park, where we set up everything. We're really glad to be here. This is where we'll be for the next 2 workshop sessions. And I'm just going to keep drilling these in. Our next one is going to be on rooftop solar, all the ins and outs of it, ways to finance it, ways to save money on it, and how it can save people long term. Financially, that's going to be this coming Wednesday, May 26th, 6 to 7:30 p.m. It'll be here physically, or it'll be at the exact same Zoom link. And then our next one that Cheyenne mentioned we're working to build a pathway for good jobs in the solar installation industry. We got a lot of stuff to share about vocational training programs for solar installation. That's going to be June 5th, Saturday, 1 to 2:30 p.m. Again, it'll be here physically and also at the same Zoom link. We also, something I didn't mention before is that we recently got a Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection grant to build a solar installation vocational training classroom at Vocasio Career Prep High School. It's a vocational school right here in Hunting Park. And our goal, our timeline is to build that this summer and to hopefully start classes in this fall.